Now, this is also an inspiration to the fellas out there to spawn conversation with your children, right? Open up the window for them to talk to you. We're always so used to being, the voice of reason and the authority figure. So we're used to talking and giving them advice and telling them what they should and shouldn't do and showing them the right way. But we also need to make sure to spend enough time listening to our children, because what's happening, y'all? This is Mike D with Black Fathers Now, where we're bringing the village to the brothers. Every couple of weeks, you can look forward to a quick inspirational message or a thought-provoking guest with knowledge and wisdom, all geared towards helping you be the best father that you can be. We're bringing the village to you. Now it's your turn to do something with what you learned. All right, y'all. Let's go. What's up, fellas? This is Mike D with Black Fathers Now. Hope y'all are having a great morning. Definitely, this is an interesting episode today. And it's interesting because of the inspiration behind it. And if you are open, you can find and generate inspiration from everywhere. And I'm going to jump into that in a second. But definitely make sure to visit blackfathersnow.com. Subscribe the iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, Mike Dorsey. It's under Mike Dorsey, but if you search Black Fathers Now, you'll find various episodes and all of that via YouTube. Make sure to subscribe and like my channel, share my channel, and then also just share the various platforms that you listen to the podcast on, because we want to continue to impact tens of thousands. Well, we want to get to hundreds of thousands and even millions, of brothers around the world. So definitely share. Your help is greatly appreciated to get the message out there. Also visit IamMikeDorsey.com if you're interested in having me come out and speak to your various groups, schools, organizations, businesses. I'd love to come out and just kind of pour into the crowd. And that's just what I do. That's what I love to do. So definitely visit IamMikeDorsey.com. Check out a few clips and, just submit a request. And I'd love to come check out your event and add value to it. But, again, like I mentioned in the very beginning, you can find inspiration from just about any source if you're open to it, right? And this morning, my inspiration actually came from a conversation with my kids on the way to school. Now, this is also an inspiration to the fellas out there to spawn conversation with your children, right? Open up the window for them to talk to you. We're always so used to being, the voice of reason and the authority figure. So we're used to talking and giving them advice and telling them what they should and shouldn't do and showing them the right way. But we also need to make sure to spend enough time listening to our children, because our children can impart so much wisdom and expose us to so many different things that we, being kind of stuck in our routine, don't always pay attention to. Because, we have things to do. We got bills to pay and jobs to go to, businesses to run, and, households to manage, and, spouses to keep happy, and kids to keep, sane and clothed and fed and protected and all of that. I mean, so much going on that we can really just get caught up in our own routine and omit the fact that there are so many inspirations and so many, points of inspiration or opportunities to learn around us. And sometimes they're in very unlikely places. And for some of us, those unlikely places are our children. Now, for most of us, once we've kind of been around the block once or twice, we come to realize that we can learn a heck of a lot of stuff from our kids, right? And but this morning was an example. On the way to school, we were talking just about, what they're excited about and what they're looking forward to on this Monday morning, headed to school. And I don't really know how. Oh, I know how it was. We were talking about grass and, weeds and all of that. And I don't know how the kids ended up on this discussion, but one of my little girls, so I have a little girl and a little boy. My girl is 7 and my boy is 5. And my girl has really been enthralled with George Washington Carver. Now, my wife went to Tuskegee and is a graduate of Tuskegee University, so she's kind of influenced a little bit of that, right? She's kind of planting those seeds. I think she wants another Tuskegee alum in the family. But, that's another conversation. And that would be dope. That would be cool with me as well. But either way, my little girl has been very intrigued by George Washington Carver. And during Black History Month, she was charged by her teacher to do a presentation on, someone, influential in Black history, and she chose George Washington Carver. So she's just been going ham on George Washington Carver, telling me all kind of stuff that she learned about him. And one of the things that she talked about this morning as we were diving into our just regular routine morning conversation on the way to school, she was talking about the title of a book that she was reading or that she had read in class. And the title of the book was "A Weed is Just a Flower Growing in the Wrong Place." And that was a quote from George Washington Carver. A weed is just a flower growing in the wrong place. A weed is a flower. And it was literally profound to me because, I had to go and look and I found the quote and I was like, wow, that's powerful. A weed is just a flower growing in the wrong place. And we got off into talking about dandelions and how at the grocery store you can buy dandelion greens. And I told them a couple of years ago I actually cooked some and they didn't like them. But so they asked me to, buy them again because now I guess with this whole concept of weeds or flowers just in the wrong place, they want to try dandelion greens again. So I'll let y'all know how that goes. That's a different conversation. But just this concept, a weed is just a flower growing in the wrong place. George Washington Carver. Think about that. And again, this is the inspiration from my kids' conversation this morning, specifically my little girl who's been, really enthralled with George Washington Carver. But when she said that, I thought about us, fellas, as black men and as black fathers. Sometimes when we look in the mirror, we see or believe that we're a weed. And so when you think about a weed, and I'm not talking about weed, I'm talking about a weed in your yard, right? But sometimes when we look in the mirror, we see a weed. We see something that's growing out of place. We see something that, that's not managed, that basically takes away from the landscape of a perfectly manicured yard. We look in the mirror and we see a weed. We see this thing that, is swallowing up or, choking out the nutrients of vegetables in a garden, a weed. But the way George Washington Carver put it, a weed is just a flower growing in the wrong place. So as a dad, as a black man in America specifically, how often do you feel like you're a weed? How often do you feel like, I don't belong or I just don't fit in? And the reality is, outside of a few isolated situations, a few isolated environments, a few isolated cities, and environments around the country, there is a very strong likelihood that at some point in your day, you felt like a weed. You felt like something that was out of place. You felt like something that maybe doesn't belong. And that's just real. That is a real thought process, and it's just a real reality of being a black man in America. But then think about being a black father. If you feel like a weed, if you feel like you don't belong, what is it that we are then pouring into our children? Are we pouring into them the continuous negativity of the fact that, I don't belong, I don't need to be here, I don't feel like I'm adding value? Because at the end of the day, when we think about what we communicate, what we put out there, what example we're setting, that thing spills down to our children. And so they in turn start to grow up thinking that they're a weed. They start to think that, you know what? I don't belong here. I'm not supposed to be here. I don't have any value. You know, maybe I'm just buying my time until someone comes in proverbially, I'm trying to say proverbially, you know, but proverbially, you know, plucks me like someone would pluck a weed, you know, out of a garden or out of a yard. Maybe I'm just kind of buying my time until someone inadvertently comes and, you know, cuts me down and plucks me because, hey, I'm just a weed. I don't belong. I don't add value. But go back to what George Washington Carver said. He said a weed is just a flower growing in the wrong place. So you need to take a step back, fellas, and think about, yes, we have a challenging existence. African American men specifically have a complicated history that cannot be summed up in one conversation. It can't even be summed up in one series, right? I mean, it is very complicated. We have history. We have a lot going on that complicates our existence, right? That's just being completely transparent. But at the end of the day, no matter how complicated, you're still a flower. You might be growing in the wrong place, but you're still a flower. And we need to make sure that when we look in the mirror, we no longer look for that weed who is no longer, or who does not fit in, or who does not, you know, match the landscape, or who is not designed to be here. We need to start flipping the script and looking at ourselves as a flower who may just be growing in the wrong place. So what do you do then? Do you need to change your location? Maybe. Do you need to simply change your mindset? Maybe. Do you need to just change how you approach every day? Maybe. I don't know. That's something for you to find out, but it all starts with, how do you view yourself? And go back to the words of George Washington Carver that were inspired by a simple conversation with my kids this morning. A weed is just a flower growing in the wrong place. So in the right place, that weed is valued. In the right place, that weed is given to a spouse in a show of affection. In the right place, that weed gets fertilized and gets highlighted, and they start to build around it because that becomes a centerpiece of someone's yard. But in the wrong place, it just gets mowed down like every other piece of grass that might not belong in that place. Marinate on that, fellas. I want you to really think about that. Again, George Washington Carver's, a weed is just a flower growing in the wrong place. You're not a weed. You're a flower. Now, whether you're in the right place or not, that's something for you to find out. It's something for you to, to determine and evaluate. But at the end of the day, you're not a weed. You are a flower. All right. Well, fellas, I hope this was good, inspirational, thought-provoking, and I hope this inspires you to have conversations with your kids, right? Have conversations with your kids, but then also be open to getting inspired from everywhere. Be open to garnering inspiration from every instance. I mean, the world is your classroom. Be open to it. And so just be open. And I love to hear your thoughts on this episode, fellas. As always, visit blackfathersnow.com. Subscribe via iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe, share. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Visit IamMikeDorsey.com and grab some apparel, blackfamilyapparel.com. Grab some dope apparel that celebrates the nuances of the black family. And, until next time, y'all be blessed, well, and wise. And I'll holler at you. Peace.
Yo, fellas, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And always visit blackfathersnow.com, as well as follow Black Fathers Now on virtually every social media platform you can think of. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere. Just follow us and engage with us, man. Look forward to hearing from you. And I guess until next time, I'll holler at you. Peace.